Welcome to the August 17th, 2021 meeting of the Santa Barbara City Council. We'll call this meeting to order and we'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you would call the roll, please, Ms. Clerk. Thanks.
Yes, Councilmember Jordan.
Here.
Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez.
Here.
Councilmember Snedden. Oh, is absent. Councilmember Friedman.
Here.
Councilmember Harmon. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Oscar Gutierrez.
Present.
And Mayor Maria.
Here, thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda, Mr. Casey?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, we'll go to public comment then. This is the public's opportunity to speak to us regarding items that are not on our official agenda. Ms. Clerk, is anyone raising their hand? I see a few people in the audience.
Yes, Madam Mayor, we have James Marston and Leslie Weinstock. Anyone else who is logged in would like to speak in public comment, please raise your hand or send a question in the app letting me know, or send an email to clerk@santabarbaraca.gov. And so we'll have James Marston, then Leslie Weinstock, then Hannah Hewlin-Meek. So Mr. Marston, go ahead when you can.
Ms. Gorman, I had mentioned it. I just wanted my written comments for the general public, or the general comments, to go to the mayor and the council members. I have nothing to add for the general comment, okay?
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Mercer.
Sorry about that. That's correct. Leslie Weinstock. Leslie Weinstock, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Leslie Weinstock. I just want you all to think about waking up tomorrow morning with a small cell, which is not really small, cell tower in your front yard. Cell phone radiation has been proven by National Institutes of Health to cause cancer. The Environmental Working Group has just released shocking findings of a new peer-reviewed study on cell phone radiation. Their scientists found that the FCC current regulations are woefully outdated and unsafe. They called for new cell phone radiation standards. The major breaking news happened last Friday. The DC Circuit Court of Appeals ordered the FCC to explain why it ignored scientific evidence showing harm from wireless radiation. Regarding the FCC exposure limits, the court said, quote, "Finally, we find the commission's order arbitrary and capricious in its complete failure to respond to comments concerning environmental harm caused by radio frequency radiation," end quote. That's the good news. The bad news is that despite the many cities opposing, including Santa Barbara, the state wireless bills, SB 556 and AB 537, they're passing. They will deregulate the industry and destroy all our local authority. This will allow 5G antennas on every pole, every street light within a few feet of our bed, causing fire and safety hazards, lowering property values, and threatening health. The telecoms are using the tobacco playbook and disinforming the legislature. These bills absolutely do not bridge the digital divide for unserved and underserved populations. The solution to bridge the digital divide is affordable and accessible to all municipal wired broadband, 10,000 times faster than wireless, safer, less hackable, less expensive, vastly more energy efficient, more secure, more reliable, and will protect our property values and reduce fire risks. Once these terrible bills are passed, they will override all local authority. Therefore, our only hope is for you to take action before they pass the floor by August 28th. The first step to take is to read the stellar ordinance review analysis by our new attorney that SafeCheck SBC emailed to you yesterday adopt the recommendations and amendments, and consider fast tracking the city ordinance before these bills pass. Another option is to pass an urgency ordinance based on the ordinance review analysis that we sent to you. Otherwise, any protections in the new city ordinance will be worthless. We are looking forward to working with you as soon as possible.
Thanks so much, Ms. Weinstock. Appreciate it.
Our next speaker is Hannah Hewlin Meek, then Miriam Lindbeck. Hannah Hewlin Meek, looks like you're disconnected. Please call in or connect with your computer audio. We'll go to Miriam Lindbeck. Miriam Lindbeck, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council members. I would like to just simply ditto exactly what Leslie Weinstock has reported today. It seems that we're going to be seeing some changes from the federal level all the way down to state and to local levels. The press is on. Common Cause recently put out a report on the lobbying that the telecoms and their trade associations do. And with the 116th congressional cycle, they actually spent $234 million lobbying Congress and the White House. It ends up being $320,000 a day for 7 days a week. They are actually promoting the digital divide. They keep widening that. They do not want to serve the less served and the underserved people. There's no profit for them in this. It looks like really the power is falling strictly to the hands of the local municipalities. The state is moving against local powers. That needs to be stopped. It's a very, very serious and egregious situation. And we need, as our city council people, to stand up as the only barrier between the people and the oversized telecom industry. So we are urging a strong partnership with you on working an ordinance that is so highly protected that everything for our approval agent in Santa Barbara, that officer has every step that they need, every piece of information that they need to regulate these permits and applications that are coming in so that they can do a true denial or a true approval, and also be prepared with all their data, have all their fact finding all written out so that if there was any possible litigation, the federal courts would be able to support the city in its decisions on denying any towers. We need to be strong. We need to be ironclad. We need to be clear. Our purpose and intent has to be absolutely clear without any question. Let's stand up. Let's make this powerful, because we are the only barrier between us and a massive industry. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Lindbeck.
Our final speaker is Hannah Hewlin Meek, but Hannah Hewlin Meek, you are not connected. We can, you don't have a phone or an audio connection. If you would like to send an email to clerk@santabarbaraca.gov, I will forward that on to the mayor and council. And no further speakers, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and close public comment then, with thanks to everyone who participated. Moving on to the consent calendar. Ms. Clerk, if you have items to read, go ahead. And members of the public, if you'd like to speak on a consent item, let the clerk know through the GoToWebinar function. And council members, you can let me know if you want to pull anything. But go ahead, Ms. Gorman, if you have some items to read.
Very good. Item 1, introduction of ordinance establishing speed limits. Recommendation the council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara amending section 10.60.015 of the Santa Barbara Municipal Code to set prima facie speed limits on certain portions of Anacapa Street, Canon Perdido Street, Cliff Drive, Shoreline Drive, and State Street. Item 2, adoption of ordinance between the city of Santa Barbara and Sen Seeker Engineering, Inc. Recommendation the council adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara approving and authorizing the airport director to execute a lease agreement between the City of Santa Barbara and Senseeker Engineering, Inc., a California corporation, for 1,520 square feet of space at Building 223 and surrounding areas located at 94 Frederick Lopez Road. Item 3, adoption of decision and finding resolution for a street widening setback variance at 421 South Milpas Street. Recommendation the council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara granting a street setback variance at 421 South Milpas Street, APN 017-313-012, and authorizing execution of a street setback variance agreement. And item 4, adoption of resolution to amend resolution number 21050 to replace pages 15 and 20 through 29 of the city schedule of penalties, fees, rates, and service charges for fiscal year 2022. Recommendation the council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 21-050 to replace pages 15 and 20 through 29 of the city's schedule of penalties, fees, rates, and service charges for fiscal year 2022. And that's all the items, Madam Mayor.
Yes. Would you read item 14, please? Because it will be saying a few words about that.
Certainly. Item 14, interim city administrator appointment and employment agreement.
Thanks. Council members, any items to pull? Members of the public, any desire to speak? Then let's go ahead and look at number 14, which is the appointment as the interim city administrator of Rebecca Bjork, who is serving right now as the deputy city administrator and formerly longtime director of our Public Works Department, the largest department in our city government. And I'm very pleased that our council has approved her appointment. We're very excited to appoint her. This is our first public notice of it. Ms. Bjork, if you're there, I would invite you to come say a few words, and we'll be executing your contract today. So if then we'll take a vote and then sign. So go ahead, please.
Mayor Murillo, Council, I'm very honored to be asked to take on the interim role. I'm looking forward to providing continuity to the organization and providing service to all of you on council during this interim period. I will say I'm very sorry to see Mr. Casey go. His 24 years here have been very good, and he served in a number of roles, and I've learned a lot from him and wish him the very, very best. But I'm really excited to continue to serve this organization and provide the continuity that my 33 years of service can provide. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Casey is leaving a tight running ship for you and for us. So we appreciate that too. So no one seems to be wanting to make a public comment, I think, Ms. Clerk. And if there's no desire to vote on any of these items separately, I'll entertain a motion to move the calendar forward in its entirety. Mr. Jordan?
Madam Mayor, I'll move the consent calendar.
Thank you.
I'll second.
And a second for Mr. Friedman. Thank you. If there's no other objection, we'll waive for the reading and we'll take a roll call vote to move all these items forward. Thank you.
Very good. This is a motion by Councilmember Jordan, seconded by Councilmember Friedman for the entirety of the consent calendar. Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez.
Yes.
Councilmember Harmon.
Yes.
Councilmember Snedden is absent. Councilmember Friedman.
Yes.
Councilmember Jordan.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Oscar Gutierrez.
Aye.
And Mayor Maria.
Aye. Very good. Thank you. And welcome to Ms. Bjork. Well, actually, she takes over when Mr. Casey leaves, which will be September 11th. So thank you. We'll close this item with thanks to everyone, all the staff who worked on all those items. We sometimes move the consent calendar forward without acknowledging all the work that goes behind every single item. We'll move on to number 16. Ms. Clerk, if you would read that into the record, please.
Certainly. Item 16, Access Advisory Committee Annual Report.
Thanks. Is it Mr. Demore who will do the presentation?
Yes, that is correct.
Welcome and take it away.
All right, thank you, and good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Brian Demore, City Engineer for the City of Santa Barbara. And for this item, I am presenting to you in my other capacity as the city's ADA coordinator. One of the duties of the city's ADA coordinator is to report annually to the City Council regarding the activities and achievements of the Access Advisory Committee. As with prior reports, rather than simply present on the activities and achievements of the committee related to accessibility, I'm going to also take some time to provide some important background as it relates to accessibility in our community and within this organization. Next slide, please. Today's presentation will include some background on the ADA coordinator's role, details related to the role of the Access Advisory Committee in accordance with a proposed revision to the committee's resolution. I will spend the bulk of the time on this item providing an update on outdoor business operations before I conclude with some other highlights from the past year and future goals and objectives of the committee. Next slide, please. To begin to understand the ADA coordinator's role, we first have to go back and look at the Americans with Disabilities Act, known as the ADA, which was signed into law in July of 1990. The ADA is a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination based on disability. The ADA also requires covered employees to provide reasonable accommodations to employees with disabilities and imposes accessibility requirements on public accommodations. The ADA is broken up into various titles. Title I applies to employment. Title II applies to state and local government entities. Title III applies to public accommodations and commercial facilities. And Title IV applies to telecommunications. Under Title II, individuals with disabilities are protected from discrimination on the basis of disability in services, programs, and activities provided by state and local governments. Title II further states that if a public entity has 50 or more employees, it is required to designate at least one responsible employee to coordinate ADA compliance. Although the law does not refer to this person as an ADA coordinator, this term is commonly used in state and local governments across the country. In addition to my position as city engineer, I serve as the city's designated ADA coordinator. The ADA coordinator is typically responsible for coordinating efforts to comply with Title II and investigating any complaints regarding Title II violations. The name, office address, and telephone number of the ADA coordinator must be provided to interested parties. And the ADA coordinator serves as the primary point of contact for ADA compliance, for city organization, and for members of the community. The ADA coordinator ensures that all members of the workforce have an opportunity to participate in programs, activities, and services offered in a full and meaningful way. The ADA coordinator ensures that ADA violations do not occur, or if they do, that they are remedied. In addition to providing equal access to all, avoiding and/or quickly remedying these violations provides significant protection from liability for the city as well as our local businesses. And the more time I spend wearing this hat, the ADA coordinator hat, the more I recognize the significance and the importance of this role. Next slide, please. The role of the Access Advisory Committee has evolved and continues to evolve. What started in 1988 as an ad hoc advisory committee to assist the ABR and the HLC in reviewing public projects later became known as the Staff Advisory Access Committee. And that had a purpose of assisting and advising city staff on matters pertaining to providing access for the disabled and compliance with the state building code regarding accessibility. In 2008, the committee was formally renamed to the Access Advisory Committee. And currently staff are working on and have a draft revision to the AAC resolution, which is tentatively scheduled to come to council next month. Next slide, please. The draft AAC resolution makes some changes to the purpose of the AAC, which is to assist and advise staff on public accessibility issues by actively promoting the total integration and participation of persons with disabilities into all areas of economic, political, and community life, serving as a coordinating body for the purpose of receiving input from citizens on the needs and concerns of the disabled community, formulating and recommending solutions to those identified needs and concerns, and conveying such recommendations to the appropriate city departments, working with city staff to create conditions to establish policies and practices and to develop programs and services which will facilitate the full integration and participation of persons with disabilities into all areas of economic, political, and community life. Next slide. Serving as a stakeholder in the design, planning, and implementation of city projects and programs to facilitate accessibility for persons with disabilities, providing oversight for monitoring compliance with such codes, ordinances, and statutes that affect access to or use of city facilities, programs, and services by persons with disabilities, providing advice regarding the setting of priorities for projects to remove barriers and improve access within the city's public rights of way, and identifying opportunities to educate the public about disability and disability access issues within the community. The council can expect to see the full revised resolution next month, most likely on the consent calendar. Next slide, please. The single biggest issue that the AAC has been actively engaged in over the past year plus has been related to the expanded outdoor business operations. This began back in May of 2020 with the emergency ordinance, which permitted businesses to use specific areas of adjacent public streets, sidewalks, parking spaces, and lots. And as was reflective of the emergency situation we were in at the time, the expanded business operations were permitted with no pre-approval necessary. In addition, the initial guidelines only specified that they were to comply with all state, federal, and local requirements. As a result, since the opening of State Street, staff have been working with businesses who were not initially meeting accessibility standards. Despite a tremendous amount of outreach and several iterations of improved guidelines, compliance has been mixed. Earlier this year, staff began to address these compliance issues by issuing correction notices. Next slide, please. More recently, staff have shifted their focus to sidewalk enforcement. With the state reopening in mid-June of this year, staff recommended to council that the sidewalk areas be cleared of business activities not permitted under the city's outdoor dining license agreement program. This recommendation was seen as a necessary step in restoring accessibility to the sidewalk portion of the right-of-way And this recommendation was supported by council on June 22nd. Staff subsequently have been or conducted outreach and notifications to affected businesses over the following 2 weeks. And there was a deadline to clear sidewalks by July 9th, and enforcement began soon thereafter. Next slide, please. I mentioned earlier that only business operations approved under the city's outdoor dining license agreement program, I'll call that ODLA as I move forward, would be permitted in sidewalk areas. What is the purpose of requiring approval under the ODLA program? Well, it accomplishes several things. It ensures that an appropriate level of accessibility is provided. For example, our outdoor dining guidelines call for an 8-foot wide clear path of travel on State Street. This is more than the minimum required by ADA. However, it really is the minimum necessary given the location to ensure a safe, predictable path of travel. The program gives staff the opportunity to partner with our local businesses in the development of proposed layouts and configurations before installation. Fees already substantially reduced in prior budget cycles continue to be waived for the duration of the emergency ordinance. And how are we doing on achieving compliance? By and large, I would say we have seen good cooperation from our local businesses, taking the lesson learned from the efforts to achieve compliance with the on-street accessibility standards. Downtown parking staff were augmented with staff from other divisions and other departments. After extensive outreach, followed by inspection of over 160 businesses, 67 correction notices were issued. And at this point in time, only approximately 7 remain in non-compliance. If not corrected, administrative citations of up to $250 per violation per day can be issued, and if no action is taken, more significant penalties may follow. But staff continue to reach out to these businesses and are available to assist with evaluating the feasibility of permitting some of this activity under the outdoor dining program. However, it should be noted that not all business areas that were utilized during the initial phase of the emergency ordinance would be permissible under the outdoor dining program. Next slide. The next series of slides depict some examples of what it looks like now on State Street that we've been able to clear most of the activity, the non-permitted activity. And this first slide shows the 400 block of State Street. It's on the west side, just south of Haley. Along this stretch, a series of parklets straddled the top of curb, creating a significant narrowing of the sidewalk. And removing this portion of the parklets from the sidewalk has restored full accessibility to this area. Next slide. This slide depicts a business operation that was on the east side of the 1200 block of State Street. And at this location, it was common to see tables and chairs arranged in a somewhat irregular pattern that was impeding the pedestrian path of travel. And as you can see in the after slide, that path of travel is now fully restored. Next slide. So we talk a lot about State Street, but this is not just a State Street issue. This slide is showing Coast Village Road, the 1200 block. At this location, a restaurant set up operations on an already narrow sidewalk, and restoring this area, as you can see in this picture, has greatly improved accessibility. Next slide. So what are the next steps? Well, for outdoor business operations, it includes continued enforcement of unpermitted sidewalk usage. Staff are also looking at possible revisions to the outdoor dining guidelines, including limited expanded use, as well as the possibility of providing some standard options for tables, chairs, barriers, etc., in order to expedite review and approval of new applications. We are also looking for additional opportunities to increase awareness for accessibility requirements through outreach and education. And we will be resuming enforcement of the parklet slash enclosure accessibility issues. These are the on-street areas. This was an effort that was underway earlier in the year before the June reopening shifted the focus to the sidewalks. Typical non-compliance issues that we see in these areas include lack of access ramps to the outdoor dining spaces, as well as the absence of accessible tables and paths of travel to the accessible tables. The next slide. So aside from the outdoor business operations, there have been many other notable activities as well as achievements related to accessibility in the last year. Staff have been working with the Access Advisory Committee on an implementation plan to increase the number of on-street accessible parking spaces in the downtown core. Staff have taken initial information provided by the AAC and have created and now maintain an accessible parking zone map on the city's website. We have also, staff has updated the ADA grievance form, which is available online in a web format, and that is available for reporting accessibility issues. Also, and it's not listed here, but it's been a significant achievement, has been the involvement of a couple of members of the Access Advisory Committee on the city's website application replacement program. Scott Nelson made a considerable effort to include the AAC input in this process that has led to the selection of and recommendation of a vendor for this important work. Digital accessibility is an area of continued growth that does require ADA compliance. Next slide. Activity in our capital programs with significant accessibility components includes 161 new and retrofitted sidewalk access ramps, over 6,000 square feet of new or replaced sidewalk. That's roughly a third of a mile of new sidewalk. A completion of the Cabrillo Pavilion renovation. ADA compliant gangway projects at the waterfront. Design for elevators both at City Hall and the Central Library. And you'll hear more about some of these projects later today in the CIP report. ADA improvements on the second floor at City Hall and the Library Plaza project, which is in design. These are just some of the projects that include accessibility improvements, either as the primary scope of work or as voluntary accessibility upgrades as a portion of the project. Next slide. Future goals and objectives in working with the AAC as the city's ADA coordinator include finalizing the updated Access Advisory Committee resolution, which is tentatively planned for next month. Implementation of the on-street accessible parking plan. Enabling AAC input on key capital projects prior to construction. Raising awareness of ADA deficiencies inside commercial buildings open to the public. Finding creative solutions to the enforcement of accessible parking violations. Developing outreach and education tools for local businesses. And continuing regular updates from staff on capital projects. As the city's ADA coordinator, I look forward to working with the committee in the year ahead in helping to provide access throughout our community in city services, programs, and activities. Next slide. That concludes this annual ADA coordinator report. I'm happy to take any questions, and also would like to remind members of the public that they can send accessibility related inquiries to the email address ada@santabarbaraca.gov. Thank you.
Thank you for that report, Mr. Demore. I am stepping in for the mayor. She had to step away for a family matter. But I will now open it up to my colleagues to see if they have any questions. Anybody? Okay. Well, there's no questions from my colleagues, so now I'd like to open it up to public comment. Madam Clerk, is there anybody on the line?
Yes. Mr. Pro Tem, we have Barbara Silver. I will check in if any of the other persons who have logged in do wish to speak on this item. And I will also read a comment into the record from Jacob Lesnar Buxton. So why don't I start with that, and then we'll take Barbara Silver. My name is Jacob Lesnar Buxton, and I am a disability advocate in our town who has met with many of you over the years. On August 17th, the council will hear a report from the Access Advisory Committee on their work over the past year. As a person with a disability, my life has changed in the past 15 months. Many members of my community have had similar experiences. In the past year and a half, the following incidents have happened. Number one, MTD has suspended the city-funded State Street and Waterfront shuttle, making it hard for many with disabilities to run errands downtown. Item two, the city has allowed outside dining on State Street, leading to crowded sidewalks that are hard to navigate by many with mobility devices. I have tripped over a bike rack set up by a restaurant on a sidewalk. Three, city meetings have moved online to the GoToWebinar platform. This platform is difficult for those who have low vision to navigate. Item four, a friend of mine who is blind has been denied numerous apartments due to his disability, Section 8 status, and the fact that he's on Social Security, thus violating California's source of income and fair housing laws. Item five, I have been called retarded by about 6 people on the street since June, more than this has ever happened here before. Though I don't hold you responsible for all these incidents, I believe some of you have made decisions about policy based on your unconscious ableism. For those who don't know, ableism is the discrimination of and social prejudice against people with disabilities based on the belief that the typical abilities are superior. That quote comes from Ableism 101 by Ashley Eisenmenger. I would encourage you to reflect on some of your biases toward people with disabilities, just as I, a white man, need to be aware of some of my tendencies to act in ways that are racist or sexist. For those of you who are interested in learning more about ableism and disability history and culture, I would highly recommend that you come to a workshop I am doing for the community on Zoom, September 2nd at 7 p.m. If you or the public is interested in attending, please email me at jakeoaktown, JAKEOAKTOWN @gmail.com for the link. Thanks for reading, and I look forward to working with you to make Santa Barbara a more accessible place. Sincerely, Jacob Lesnar Buxton.
Thank you.
Very good. Our next speaker is Barbara Silver. Barbara Silver, please go ahead.
I take it I'm unmuted now and you can hear me? Yes?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you very much. This is my first time trying this way. As a long-serving member of the AAC, I want to thank Brian for this comprehensive report. It has been, he's been a great catalyst to the effectiveness of our committee. And I hope with all the changes in the administrative staff coming along, that he will continue to serve in this role. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that.
And we have one more speaker, James Marston. James Marston, you can go ahead.
Hi there. I want to thank Brian Demore and also Sarita King for this outstanding report of the AAC achievements in this 31st anniversary year of the passage of the ADA. I was very impressed with Brian's overview of the city's responsibility on Title II. This is something that has kind of slipped by, and I hope that now that it's understood that we can get more compliance. Brian and Sarita have been very helpful in bringing the promise of the ADA to the city and to be a clearinghouse for members of the public to address their concerns on accessibility. I have served on disability committees here in the city since 1998 and have served as chairman of the Access Advisory Committee for 3+ years. Members of this group voiced their concerns about the COVID-related openings of outdoor dining accessibility problems back in May of 2020. I and many others have been very pleased that finally, after a year and a half, the public sidewalks have finally been open to the public in its entirety. I want to thank the Downtown Parking Group and the mayor and the council members for returning that public space to the citizens. This makes our community much more inviting to families, visitors, and of course, members of the disability community, which were effectively banned from these areas. So I just want to thank you very much for returning these public spaces to us. And again, I'll agree with Ms. Silver. I think that Brian and Sarita have been very helpful. To me, they're the best leaders of this group so far and have gotten a lot of things done and accomplished. And I hope that the council members and mayor realize how important this is to the city and how this could be a big liability if things get out of hand. So thank you again, council, for keeping the sidewalks clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else?
No, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, no further speakers on this item.
Okay, thank you. I'd now like to open it back up to my colleagues if there's any closing remarks you'd like to make about this item before we move on to the next one. Okay, I want to add on my behalf that I would like to meet with more of you and attend some of those meetings myself, so I'll be reaching out to you. Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, if we could have the next item read to us, please.
Yes, item 17, Chapala Street Vision Zero project, restriping Chapala Street, Arriaga Street to Mission Street to 1 lane.
Thank you. And I see Mr. Bailey is on. Mr. Bailey, if you'd like to give us a report, please.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. My name is Derek Bailey and I'm with the city's traffic engineering group in the Public Works Department. Joining me today is Jessica Grant, and she's the city's supervising transportation planner. And we're here today to seek your approval to move forward with the Chapala Street Vision Zero safety project that involves lane reduction between Arriaga Street and Mission Street. Next slide, please. City Council adopted the Vision Zero strategy in 2018 with the goal of eliminating serious and fatal injuries resulting from traffic collisions. So our vision is zero serious injuries and fatalities. One way that we're working towards that goal is to perform a Vision Zero collision analysis prior to paving projects to see if there's any changes that should be made to improve safety. And Chapala Street is scheduled for paving later this year between Sola Street and Mission Street. Next slide, please. This image shows the Vision Zero high priority corridor network in Santa Barbara. 77% of serious collisions happen on about 20% of city streets. So in terms of maximizing our safety efforts and effectiveness, these streets are where our efforts should be focused. Next slide, please. So I'll share a few recently completed projects. The first is the Las Positas restriping projects that created a center turn lane on Las Positas adjacent to the municipal golf course. Before restriping, there were 4 collisions annually through the section, and since the restriping, there has only been 1, and that was a DUI. The image on the left shows the intersection of Las Positas and Macaw, which now has dedicated left turn lanes. And prior to restriping, this intersection is where most of the collisions happened along this corridor. But since the restriping, there have been no collisions at this intersection. Next slide. This is the East Cabrillo restriping project, and this involved a lane reduction and installation of the city's first back-in angle parking location. And before the project, there were 3.2 collisions annually, and since the restriping, there have been 2.5 collisions annually. But most of those collisions happened shortly after implementation. And we've gone almost a year and a half with no reported collisions. So we're encouraged the drivers are adjusting well to the changes. Next slide. And this is the Anacapa Street restriping that was completed in 2020. Before the restriping, there were 2 collisions annually, and since the restriping, there have not been any. Next slide, please. Earlier this year, the city repaved Santa Barbara Street, and as part of that project, some adjustments were made to the De La Guerra Street intersection, which is an offset intersection. You can see the before and after images on the screen. On the left is the before image. Notice the large sweeping corners, and these corners allow drivers to turn at fairly high speeds, which can cause conflicts in our downtown area that has a lot of pedestrians. Also, the pedestrian access ramps on those large sweeping corners pointed directly out into the center of the intersection, so blind pedestrians had a harder time orienting themselves crossing the street. On the right, you can see that the shape of the corners have been changed to slow driver turning speeds, and the crosswalk on the north side of the intersection was realigned to improve sightlines. Next slide. This photo is also at that same intersection, Santa Barbara Street and De La Guerra Street. And you can see the new pedestrian access ramp points directly across the street instead of out into the middle of the intersection. And we also installed new audible traffic signal push buttons that announce when the walk light is on for blind pedestrians. Next slide. So moving on to the item before you, one of our next paving projects will be on Chapala Street later this year. So in preparation for this project, Public Works staff performed a Vision Zero collision analysis to see if there's any trends or patterns happening on Chapala Street. We found that between 2015 and 19, between Mitchell-Traina Street to Mission Street, there were 32 collisions resulting in 19 injuries. And the highest location was at Arriaga Street with 7 collisions. And the most common type of collision was a broadside. We also looked 5 years further back to between 2010 and 14. And during that time frame, there were 29 collisions with 19 injuries. So very similar to the most recent 5 years. So that basically tells us that if we don't make any changes, we can expect roughly 30 collisions and 19 injuries over the next 5 years. Next slide. We compared the collision rate on this segment of Chapala Street to other one-way streets in Santa Barbara. And this segment of Chapala Street has the second highest collision rate following Lower De La Vina Street below Carrillo. And for that street, Lower De La Vina below Carrillo, grant funding has been secured to implement a Vision Zero project in 2022. Next slide. So what should be done to reduce the collision record on Chapala Street? Staff is recommending a new traffic signal at Arriaga Street and improved intersection lighting, which will reduce the number of broadside collisions. We're also recommending a lane reduction between Arriaga Street and Mission Street to address speeds, reduce broadside collisions, sideswipe collisions, and collisions into parked vehicles. Next slide. So can one lane work on Chapala Street between Arriaga Street and Mission Street? And the answer is yes, if we do this correctly. And the reason it can work is that the traffic volumes are in the right range. And as you can see on the graphic on the left, if we start at the bottom of the image, the traffic volume between Sola Street and Mission Street is over 8,000 a day. And that's pretty busy. But as we move north on Chapala Street, there's a heavy left turn movement that goes towards the west side over the Mitchell-Trina Street overcrossing, and the volume drops. And in that next block, again, there's a heavy left turn movement as drivers go towards the northbound Highway 101 on-ramp. North of Arriaga Street, traffic volumes drop to about 5,600 per day. And that's very similar to Anacapa Street, which was completed last year and is working well. Next slide. If we remove one lane of traffic, it'll create some extra pavement space. And there's two possible configurations on what to do with that extra pavement space. On the left shows Bath Street, and that has a bike lane. And on the right shows Anacapa Street, and that has buffered shoulders on either side of the traffic lane. While we've received positive feedback on Anacapa Street, the cycling community has said they would have preferred bike lanes on Anacapa Street instead of the buffered shoulders. So next time Anacapa Street is restriped, we can revisit that. Next slide. The reason I bring that up is just connectivity to other cycling facilities. This map shows cycling facilities near the north end of our downtown area. You can see Anacapa Street, which is in red, does not connect to any other cycling facilities. So the buffered shoulder configuration without bike lanes made sense at the time that it was implemented. But Chapala Street, which we're talking about today, is shown in blue. And that feeds right into the existing bike lane north of Mission Street. So from a network connectivity perspective, utilizing the extra space created by the lane reduction for a bike lane makes sense for Chapala. Next slide. To avoid creating congestion, we will need to provide 2 lanes at the Mission Street intersection. And the red dot shown in this image shows the approximate location just before Mission Street where that second lane should begin. And to accommodate the additional lane, some parking removal is needed. There will be either 6 or 8 parking spaces removed, depending on the lane configuration, which we'll talk about in a moment. The community was very concerned about parking removal, and staff have responded by identifying 5 nearby parking spaces that can be reintroduced to the neighborhood parking supply to mitigate the loss. Even since the council agenda report was published, we've identified several opportunities for new parking spaces. Next slide, please. Okay, so we mentioned the 2 possible lane configurations for Chapala Street as it approaches Mission Street. On the left, that shows a dedicated left turn lane and 1 through lane that will continue north on Chapala Street. And this configuration requires less parking removal, 6 spaces, and with the 5 parking spaces nearby that can be replaced, the net loss is 1. This configuration also eliminates the merge condition north of Mission Street. And this is the configuration that was supported by the community, but it results in less traffic capacity than the alternative on the right, which has 2 through lanes. Now, traffic volumes have dropped by about 25% during the pandemic. And while traffic volumes have rebounded in many areas of the city, there hasn't been much of a rebound on Chapala Street. So traffic volumes with where they are today, the community supported configuration on the left works. Next slide, please. Okay, so, uh-oh, my graph's not showing up right. This graph basically shows the pre-pandemic volumes on the top and the current volumes on the bottom from the summer of 2021. What's supposed to be on this graph that is not showing up is some orange that just shows when congestion might happen based on the existing lane configuration. But I can send those to you individually after the presentation. Next slide, please. So again, here's that image showing the lane configuration preferred by the community. And if traffic volumes rebound, this configuration could cause some congestion, particularly during the PM peak. We're planning to restudy this again in September after school is back in session, which usually results in a bump in traffic volumes. And if the 1 lane configuration works, which is supported by the community and results in less parking removal, that will be implemented. And moving forward, we can monitor it annually. And if the intersection appears to be developing some congestion, we can make changes. But on the other hand, if traffic volumes rebound by September, we plan to implement the 2 lane configuration to limit congestion. Next slide, please. So what are the trade-offs with the project? net loss of either 1 or 3 parking spaces, depending on that lane configuration near Mission Street. There'll be a slight increase in side street delay on Chapala Street as traffic is concentrated from 2 lanes into 1, and that results in fewer gaps in traffic, but it won't be very noticeable. There will also be an increase in corridor travel time of around 10 seconds. Next slide, please. Other benefits to this project, including collision reduction, is a better pedestrian environment. Chapala Street's 1 block off State Street, so many of our residents cross Chapala Street to walk downtown. 1-lane streets are easier to cross than 2-lane streets. And as shown in the image here, the 2-lane streets can create a condition that we call a multiple threat condition. That's where one driver will stop for the pedestrians, but a driver in the 2nd lane doesn't. And that risk goes away with 1-lane streets. Next slide. This slide shows the costs for the Vision Zero safety changes. The funding will be a combination of Measure C and Measure A safety funds. Next slide. Public Works hosted a public meeting on June 16th, and the community indicated strong support for the traffic signal at Arriaga and good support for the lane reduction and speed control. We also heard concerns about parking removal, which is why we've been working to find ways to replace that parking in the neighborhood. We also heard concerns about possible congestion at Mission Street and preferences for the 1 through lane to eliminate that merge condition north of the intersection and limit parking removal. Next slide. The city's Transportation and Circulation Committee reviewed the project for policy consistency on June 24th, including consistency with the Vision Zero strategy, the pedestrian master plan, the bicycle master plan, and the TCC found the project consistent with city policies and recommended that council approve this project. Next slide. And finally, staff's recommendation. We recommend the council direct staff to include the Chapala Street lane reduction striping option as part of the upcoming streets pavement maintenance project. And with that, Jessica and I are here to answer your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. I'll open it up to my colleagues to see if they have any questions. Mr. Jordan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, Mr. Bailey, how are you? So,
Good,
usual caveat, I only get to play a transportation engineer on Tuesdays, not any other day, right? So, a couple kind of questions on centering around Mission. It's just an example. So, when we make these changes and go from multiple lanes to one lane, like going north on Mission, do we take into consideration that when people can't turn one direction or another because of pedestrians in a crosswalk, that they hold up the entire row of cars behind that because we've reduced the lanes? And is that part of the trade-off and the watch you're doing on the traffic flow in there going forward?
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Jordan, yes, great question. And yes, and each intersection is a little bit different. So as we moving up Chapala Street, the unsignalized intersections, obviously there could be a slowing for pedestrians if the vehicle at the front of the platoon slows for pedestrians on crossing the side street, but also at Mission Street, yes. And part of the reason the single lane seems to be working well right now, we actually went out and closed the lane for a day and tested it at the intersection. And part of the reason it seems to be working well right now is because there is enough room for those turning vehicles to kind of clear that through path. And so they weren't holding up traffic when there were pedestrians present. But if traffic volumes continue to rebound, and that's our caveat, the length of those queues could grow and it could spill back into that through area. So that could cause some congestion.
And then somehow I'm cursed going through that intersection all the time, one way or another, either up Chapala or over on Mission, because that's where I work up there. But kind of same question on Mission. So when you're going up, and particularly at the signaled intersections, not so much the unsignaled intersections, but when you're doing this project, say in Chapala, are you also paying close attention to what's going on a cross street like Mission? it's not uncommon when you're on Mission, going towards State Street, approaching the signal at Chapala, that there is enough traffic coming downhill off of State Street that if a car is turning left onto Chapala from Mission, that's the entire signal sequence, is that one car turning left. And so are there ways you can remedy that type of problem the same time you're doing Chapala projects, or does that just become the next Mission project?
That's also a really great question. So the solution to what you're talking about is a dedicated left turn lane for eastbound Mission Street at Chapala. And that too would require parking removal, probably in the order of 5 or 6 spaces. We've made tweaks over the years to avoid that. We've made tweaks to the traffic signal timing. We've improved the detection on Chapala Street. So as soon as that last vehicle goes through on Chapala Street, the green immediately goes back to Mission, just to provide as much green time as we can on Mission to keep that queue moving. We found that a lot of drivers tend to pull around onto the shoulder there, which kind of artificially adds some capacity to that intersection. But yeah, it's a parking removal conundrum.
And that pull around's really tight. I just kind of glare at people when they do it, when you're going straight and they're pulling around you, and you're just going, okay, you know, I know you have 6 inches on each side of your car, and good luck with that, but yep. All right, then see if I can screw up all my good questions today. Chapala, to me, is one of the absolute worst surface streets above Carrillo for a section there. Certainly, right, and certainly it's horrible on all sides of Mitchell Terrena. So, I mean, it's just the manhole covers are all down inches. There's, you know, potholes out of the street and everything. Does this project also address that if it moves forward too?
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Jordan, it does. This project includes paving on Chapala Street above Sola. It's paving Mitchell Terrena Street from the overcrossing over to, I believe, either Garden or Santa Barbara Street, and includes paving of Anacapa as well. So just about everything you mentioned there will be addressed. Below Sola Street will probably happen in the next year or two. It's
not as bad, Street. I think, yeah, it kind of centers around Mitchell Terrena.
Yeah.
Either side of Mitchell Terrena for whatever reason there that some scientists could tell us about the way land moves. It just seems like it's really been brutal there for the past couple of years. Yeah, great. Well, thanks. Thank you. Thanks for a great project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Jordan. Councilmember Harmon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Mr. Bailey. I was also going to bring up the resurfacing question. So thank you, Councilmember Jordan. I'm very, very glad to hear that that is going to be included in this project. That's a priority. So thank you for that. I'm going to move away from the specific traffic engineering questions because Councilmember Jordan pretty well covered them. But I was hoping, Mr. Bailey, that you could tell us a little bit more about the public outreach in connection with this proposed project. You spoke about having a public meeting last month. Was that well attended? And if you could tell us a little bit about how that was advertised. Was it specifically to the neighbors?
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Hartman, could we go to slide 26, please? Uh, 25, I'm sorry. Can't read my own handwriting. There we are. I believe there were about 40 to 50 people that attended. It was an online meeting, of course, as we're doing these days. We tried something different for this meeting. You know, normally we do the advertising next door, City News and Brief. I think this made its way onto Ed Hat. But just we really want to make sure that people in this neighborhood have a chance to know what's going on in their neighborhood. So these poster boards were placed at every intersection up and down the corridor about a week prior to the meeting. And we actually did an informal Zoom poll during the meeting just to learn from everybody. How did you hear about our meeting? And it's about 3/4 of people actually found out about the meeting through these poster boards, as opposed to our traditional city news and brief and media releases and whatnot. So I think this is a good example of something we should do moving forward. Just it's people walking up and down the street, they can't help but see our poster boards.
That's fantastic. I'm really happy to hear that and very much support us continuing to use these. That's great that 3/4 of the folks saw it. You know, the people that walk around our own neighborhoods are the ones that are most likely to see it, the most likely to show up. So that's really exciting. Thank you for doing that. I know this has been an issue in the past with neighbors, even those who are supportive of these projects, just being surprised by it. So that's very good news. And then in terms of moving forward, if this project is to proceed today, can you remind me, and I apologize, I think you said this, but I missed it in my notes. What's the timeline for getting started, and how long can the neighbors expect for this project to take? When will it really be completed and done?
It'll be over the winter. We're kind of waiting on council direction today as to what to include in the bid package. The bid package is almost ready. We're ready to go out to bid here in the next few weeks, but the work will happen over the winter. The work's going to happen in a number of phases. Normally what happens is the concrete contractor goes in first. Actually, in this image right here, you can see a missing pedestrian access ramp. So new pedestrian access ramps will be built, sidewalks will be repaired, the underground conduit for the traffic signal will be installed. So that'll take a few weeks, and then there'll kind of be a pause because the contractor is going to be moving around the city working on other streets as well that are part of the project. And then the paving will come through. And the paving will probably only take a few days. The paving contractors can move pretty fast. So residents will probably notice kind of contractors showing up in 2 waves, one for a few weeks to do the concrete work, and then a pause, and then a few days to do the paving work. And like I said, that'll be over the winter this year, kind of late 21, early 22.
Thank you. That sounds great. And it sounds like there will be some moderate disruption, not too severe, but moderate. I hope that we can do our best to inform neighbors in advance that it's coming, perhaps through these sandwich boards again.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Arnold. Councilmember Friedman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Bailey, just a quick question. You and I discussed this, but I think it's important because there is the loss of the few spaces. And the issue is, you mentioned Anacapa Street as a prior project where we were able to do the white stripes and then keep the parking. But, and then you said that was evaluated earlier in the presentation. Can you speak to the issues of why in addition to the safety and having the bike lanes, the difference between here and Anacapa Street, especially in that area, regards to Mission Street as it approaches Mission?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Friedman, thank you. Could we go to slide 27, please? Thank you. This is a photograph of Anacapa Street, looking down Anacapa Street. That's the Mitchell Traina Street intersection just in the background. So this photo is taken right beside Notre Dame School. This is just where those buffers are ending. And then it turns into 2 lanes just as you get up to the intersection. And again, that's for traffic capacity. This is where the 2 lanes doesn't really work anymore on Anacapa Street. If we were to duplicate or replicate, pardon me, this configuration onto Chapala Street, you know, these buffers, they could be painted or painted in without the crosshatches in them, so it'd be an actual bike lane. But the bike lane would have to end at the intersection, and then it would begin again on the other side of the intersection. So that would create a probably 200 to 300 foot section where cyclists aren't protected and they don't have exclusive space of their own, and they'd be weaving with traffic. So even though we'd be well-intentioned and reducing collisions elsewhere in the corridor, we would be introducing a new safety issue with this configuration.
Thank you, Mr. Bill. I just wanted to have that explained because there's always a concern with any reduction of parking, even if it is a limited number of spaces in this area. this safety concern and the fact that that this will link up to the bike path that's already there and create a continuity was important, and just wanted to have that as part of the record for today. So if there is any questions about any reductions in parking, there's an understanding of why this was chosen instead of the model on Anacapa Street. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Any other comments from my colleagues? Okay, if there's nothing else, let's move on to public comment. Madam Clerk, I believe that there may be some additional comments from the previous item. So if we could have them speak first and then go to the comments about this current item.
Very good. We have 2 public commenters commenting on the previous item, Skylar Kovich and then Matt Lowe. Both of you are unmuted on my end. Skylar, if you can unmute yourself, you can go ahead. We'll give you a moment. And if that doesn't work, I will read your comment into the record. All right, we will go to Mr. Lowe. Mr. Lowe, if you can unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Am I live?
Go ahead, Mr. Lowe. We can hear you.
We can hear you, Mr. Lowe.
Am I live?
Yes.
Thank you. Hello, City Council. Thank you for making the point to hear my comment today. I just wanted to say thank you for the attention paid to the State Street corridor and the restaurants and the attention to sidewalk space for people with disabilities and access needs. I've noticed some restaurants, making attention to that, but there's still more that need to be done, unfortunately. I've walked it in the past 2 or 3 weeks, and there's still some that are, and so I'm not sure what that enforcement is going to look like, but yeah, it's still difficult in some areas. And so appreciate the continued effort towards that. One thing that is still kind of frustrating me, I've mentioned this, I think this is my 5th time mentioning this to City Council now, is the GoToWebinar platform. I know the accessory board committee is paying attention to this within the city's website and how that's going to be accessible, but GoToWebinar/GoToMeeting Citrix is historically not an accessible platform, and there are other options, and it's really frustrating why those other options are not being pursued, and just the ease of access and all the different hoops that I have to jump through, and people with disabilities, especially people with low vision and that are blind, have to jump through to be able to access City Council. It is, imagine being locked out of City Council, like just doors locked. It's just not, we don't have access to participate in our city convenings, and it's not fair. I can't invite people in good spirit and say, hey, come join us, because they, whether there's frustration in getting in or just not able to get in, it's not right. And so I'd really like that to be taken seriously, or to hear some action on that. So that'd be really important if we can make that a point moving forward. So I thank you for the attention as well paid to within the city during COVID and transportation, as Jacob Lesnar Buxton, who works for ILRC, has raised in the past with the downtown city shuttle services no longer working in the State Street corridor. How do we, many people with disabilities utilize that shuttle to, move and access downtown. So continuing to pay attention to that, as well as a rise in ableist comments by our citizens in our community. We need to really address this within our community. These are harmful actions, very bigoted actions towards people with disabilities. And it's not right. And so we need to figure out an action plan to address that within our community. So thank you for your attention, especially much gratitude to Jim and all the folks, Bob on the access board committee and all the folks paying attention to access needs within our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gold. Appreciate it.
Our next speaker is Skylar Kovich. We will give Skylar Kovich a moment to be unmuted on their end, and I can read Skylar Kovich's comment into the record if that doesn't come together. Okay, I will go ahead and read it into the record.
Thank you.
I'm totally blind. Oh, excuse me. And I moved to Santa Barbara with my wife and baby this spring. I am very much a supporter of outdoor dining, including downtown dining, and have enjoyed it here in Santa Barbara since moving here this spring and well before that. Outdoor dining is critical for our economy and our culture, but it needs to operate with rules which allow the free flow of walking traffic on State Street and other areas. I am totally blind, and so I would personally ask the city council to protect the right of the disabled to move independently. I know several blind people who live or work quite close to the most impacted walking paths, for whom the large number of tables is a severe, frequent inconvenience. It's also a major problem for those residents, such as myself, and visitors who may not frequent the area and may have plans disrupted when we hit unexpected obstacles. Frequently, even those of us with high levels of travel training can't get around the tables and other obstacles with canes, dogs, or even easily with brief assistance. I'm sure it can be an awkward experience for diners to watch us struggle too. Again, I'm in favor of outdoor dining. Many businesses in the State Street area, as well as my neighborhood on the Mesa, have made it work with minimal inconvenience to the disabled and other pedestrians. But it is my understanding that some businesses have used the recent crisis to expand the number of tables by further blocking sidewalks. The City Council needs to keep mandating the previously agreed upon rules to promote fairness for all. In the long term, it will be good for our business and our community. Dr. Skylar Kovich, Access Technology Instructor, Braille Institute, former political science instructor, UCSB and CSU-CI.
Thank
That's
you.
the end of that.
So now we can move on to the public comment regarding the matter we just got reported on.
Very good. I do not see any raised hands to speak on this item.
Okay, thank you. Are there any colleagues of mine on the council that would like to make any opening remarks about the item we just heard? Okay. Oh, Ms. Harmon, go ahead.
Sorry, Mayor Pro Tem. Just very briefly, Ms. Gorman, is there a speaker? Oh, go ahead. Okay, sorry. I just wanted to express my support for this project. I really appreciate the work that's gone in communicating with the neighbors about the impacts, about what the project will be. And it seems clear that it is a necessary step to make these corridors safer and to really improve the quality of the roads in these areas. So I'm very much in support. And when the time comes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I'd be happy to make the motion to move forward with the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harmon. I believe, unless there's any other comments, you're free to make the motion now. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
And Mr. Pro Tem, James Marston just raised his hand and it went down, and I apologize, Mr. Marston, if I keep calling you when you don't want to be called on, but let's unmute you briefly. Oh, it looks like you may want to speak.
Okay. I want to give a brief shout out to our traffic engineer, Derek Bailey. Before I lost my vision, I worked in civil engineering and did traffic studies, and I was very impressed with the professionalism of his presentation. But I want to say that I just recently gave a talk to the blind people at Braille Institute about the pedestrian traffic signals. And Mr. Bailey and his staff were very, very helpful on sharing with me different maps and information about the different types of traffic signals we have for pedestrians to use. So I don't have much to say except that I really appreciate his professionalism and his openness to answer any questions I write. Sometimes I get a reply back in a half an hour or something. So I'm very impressed with his professionalism and also his helpful work with the disability community and his installation of better accessible pedestrian signals, which we call APS. Those are the ones that have the big arrow on them. They actually speak the name of the street as you're crossing. They also have a countdown that now is audio in some places, so a blind person can hear the countdown for the walk across. They're much safer. I know they're expensive, but we are putting some in every year. So I just want to thank Mr. Bailey for that work. Thank you, everybody on the council.
Thank you for that. Much appreciated. Any of my colleagues have any comments they want to make? Okay. So now I will open it up for my colleagues to make a motion. Ms. Harmon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I move that we direct staff to include the Chapala Street lane reduction striping option as part of the upcoming streets pavement maintenance project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Madam Clerk, Ms. Harmon made the motion and it was seconded by Alejandra Gutierrez. Okay, with that being said, let's have a vote. Unless there's discussion, any discussion? Okay.
Very good. Councilmember Harmon.
Yes.
Councilmember Snedden is absent. Councilmember Friedman.
Yes.
Councilmember Jordan.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Oscar Gutierrez.
Aye.
And Councilmember Alejandra Gutierrez.
Yes.
Very good.
Okay, that passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, will you please read the next agenda item?
Next item, capital improvement projects status report.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Demore, you're back for round two.
Yes.
Go ahead.
All right. Good afternoon. It's me again, Brian Demore, city engineer, and this time I am wearing my city engineer hat. This presentation is an annual update on the city's capital improvement plan. It's informational only. It's not a comprehensive plan, but it is an opportunity to summarize overall progress while highlighting certain individual projects that maybe don't get as much attention, but are sometimes equally or more important than some of the projects that do get attention. Next slide, please. Since the mid-year CIP status report, we completed an additional 13 capital projects, and the total cost of those was approximately 18 million. The total number of completed projects in fiscal year 2021 was 21. So I guess we'll just keep doing one more project every year. And the total cost was approximately 49 million for those 21 projects. And as of June 30th, the end of the fiscal year, there were 48 active capital projects with a total cost of approximately $193 million. And I just want to say with our capital program, we had a little bit of a pause in the early stages of COVID and the uncertainty associated with that, but we've been very fortunate that most of our revenue sources have rebounded quite nicely. And then there's also been some one-time monies that have come in that have helped. So our capital programs remain quite strong, I think as high as ever in terms of the value of work that's underway at the moment. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, 13 projects were completed in the second half of last fiscal year. These projects are listed here as well as on the next slide, which you can please turn to the next slide. Several of these completed projects are highlighted on the individual project slides coming up. So go ahead to the next slide. The El Camino de la Luz Bridge Trestle Repairs Project is located in the Mesa area, and it consisted of repairs to the 3 concrete vertical trestles that support the pedestrian walkway. Really, they support the sewer main that's out there and the pedestrian walkways on top of that. But this is also known as the El Camino de la Luz Bridge. And there's an 18-inch cast iron transmission sewer main located underneath the pedestrian walkway. The repairs included concrete spall removal and crack cleaning, application of primer and patching material, placement of an overall sealant, and finished off with painting and anti-graffiti coating. This was done with wastewater capital funds, and there's going to be a follow-up project here in the relatively near future in which streets will be going in and replacing some of the decking on top. Next slide, please. The fiscal year 2020A pavement maintenance project was completed in April 2021, and it addressed high priority pavement maintenance needs throughout the city. It consisted primarily of removing and replacing failed sections of asphalt pavement, followed by crack sealing and slurry sealing, which is a thin resurfacing of the pavement, and it extends the longevity of the underlying asphalt. Project also included replacement of sidewalks and the installation of access ramps on various city streets, which achieved accessibility compliance. The slurry sealing alone covered segments on 40 different city streets. The next slide. Another completed project was the manhole rehab project out at 2 locations, El Estero Water Resource Center and El Camino de la Luz. This consisted of structural repairs, or the structural rehabilitation of 4 existing manholes. I mentioned the locations. These manholes were rehabilitated by installing a polymer material that is much more resistant to sewer conditions than the bare concrete, which will extend the life of these structures by many years. Next slide. So as of June 30th, the end of the last fiscal year, there were 14 projects that were in the construction phase. And when we talk about the construction phase, we're referring really to anything from contract execution on the very front end and the review of submittals all the way through to the final acceptance and invoicing closeout at the tail end. So 14 of those projects, and the total construction cost approximately 31 million. And a number of those active projects are going to be highlighted on the following slides. Next, please. The desal conveyance main project will build a new 24-inch pipeline from the desalination plant on Yananali Street to the intersection of Garden and Mission Street. It's approximately 2.25 miles, and it will allow the city to deliver desalination water to a higher pressure zone at the intersection of Foothill and San Roque. Future water projects are needed and are in the works, which will build the piping necessary to deliver this desalination water all the way to the Cater Clearwell, which will allow desalination water to be delivered to all parts of the city. This particular contract has been awarded, and construction is anticipated to begin next month. Next slide. The El Estero Water Resource Center digester dome replacement and cleaning project includes the replacement of the digester domes, biogas equipment, and valves. It also includes digester cleaning and the installation of new pressure indicating transmitters. So what does all that mean? Well, The digesters are literally the guts of the treatment process, and a well-functioning digester system utilizes microorganisms to effectively break down wastewater sludge into beneficial end products, such as methane, which we use to produce electricity, and biosolids, which are composted. So this project will allow for the continued reliability of that process. Next slide. The fiscal year 2021 storm drain repairs project repairs aging storm drains at 3 locations on La Milpita, Rialto, and West Carrillo Streets. The 3 locations were identified through streets maintenance reporting, as well as a comprehensive storm drain video effort and input from the community. The project will implement trenchless technologies that allow for storm drain repairs without invasive excavations, which minimizes costs and, importantly, minimizes impacts to the public. Next slide. The fiscal year 2021A water main replacement project replaces aging water main infrastructure, including piping, valves, and hydrants, in order to improve the quality and reliability of water service. The project will replace approximately 3.5 miles of pipe throughout the city. Next slide. The Las Positas and Modoc Roads project consists of a 2.6 mile long separated pathway along Las Positas and Modoc Roads. The pathway starts on the south side of Modoc at Calle de los Amigos and continues east to the west side of Las Positas Road, where it then goes south along Las Positas all the way to Cliff Drive. Construction began in September 2020, and it had an estimated duration of approximately 18 months. So we are still well in the midst of that project. The project is funded primarily through an active transportation program grant. Next slide. The recycled water distribution pump station upgrades project consists of replacing the existing mechanical, electrical, and control equipment in the recycled water distribution pump station building at the El Estero Water Resource Center. The pump discharge pressure will be increased, and a pressure regulator for the connection to El Estero will be added in addition to a second pressure transmitter. Much of the equipment out there is over 30 years old and no longer can be counted upon to perform reliably. The recycled water pump station serves as the backbone for the entire recycled water system, which delivers reclaimed water to many of our local parks, schools, and golf courses. This rehabilitation work will ensure the reliability of this important water supply for decades to come. It should be noted that when the recycled water system is down, we have to deliver potable water. So it's very important to keep this system up and running to keep up with demand. Next slide, please. So at the end of the last fiscal year, there were 34 active capital improvement projects in the design phase. The total committed cost to deliver these projects is approximately $162 million. Most of these projects are highlighted in the following slides. Next, please. The Carpinteria Street Bridge Replacement Project involves the removal and replacement of an existing 3-span timber bridge with a new single-span concrete bridge. Yes, you heard that right. It's a timber structure underneath that bridge on Carpinteria Street, which does receive a lot of vehicular traffic. The roadway profile will be raised to accommodate flood flows, and minor utility relocations will occur. Construction of this project is most likely at least a couple of years out, due to limited funding at this time in the Highway Bridge Program. Next slide. The Cater Finished Water Reservoir Resiliency Project is in the design phase of an optimized chlorine contact reservoir for the water treatment plant. The new reservoir will meet full disinfection compliance at half the volume of the existing clear well and provide greater operational flexibility. Additionally, the existing clear well structure will be assessed and the connected piping will be modified to receive conveyed water supplies from the distribution system, including, as I mentioned earlier, the possibility of bringing desalination water all the way up to Cater to distribute to the entire city. Next slide. The El Estero Water Resource Center Chlorine Contact Chamber Rehabilitation Project consists of the assessment and design of a redundant disinfection system to bypass flows through the existing chlorine contact chamber at El Estero during routine maintenance and periods of low flows. This will improve operational flexibility and ease of maintenance for treatment plant staff and allow for more accurate and reliable chemical dosing. Additionally, the existing chlorine contact chamber will be assessed and rehabilitated to repair areas showing structural wear. Next slide. Fiscal year 2021B pavement maintenance. This project will begin construction in early fall of this year. Project consists primarily of grinding off deteriorated asphalt and overlaying with the new asphalt on various high priority streets throughout the city. Concrete work is included, which consists of curb and gutter repairs, as well as which will improve drainage and safety at those locations. And it also includes the sidewalk access ramps, which are required to achieve compliance with current accessibility standards. Next slide. This is another water main replacement project, 2021B. And this includes approximately 1.8 miles of new water mains along portions of Alameda Padre Serra and Cliff Drive and San Andreas streets. Next slide, please. The West Side Community Paseos project will improve the walking and biking experience through the addition of shortened crosswalks, new access ramps, signage, landscaped traffic diverters, and traffic signals. It will build upon the City of Santa Barbara's Vision Zero strategy, which is to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injuries while increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all. Project improvements in the West Side neighborhood are proposed primarily on Mission, Gillespie, San Pasqual, and Mitchell-Torrena streets. The project improvements that connect east of Highway 1 through the downtown and to the east side neighborhood are proposed primarily along Mitchell-Torrena, Castillo, and Sola streets. In-house design of this project is nearing completion. Next slide. The Carrillo Gymnasium minor renewal consists of repairing exterior concrete walls, replacing exterior windows, waterproofing the roof, and painting the exterior and interior of the building. Additionally, a structural analysis will be performed to recommend upgrades for a major renewal project, which is tentatively planned for fiscal year 2025. Design for the minor renewal will be completed in early this fiscal year, and construction is anticipated to begin later in the fiscal year. Next slide. The Central Library Plaza renovation project will create a completely accessible space and will improve the usable space for a variety of public programming while reducing maintenance cost and water usage. The main entrance will include a mosaic honoring the Faulkner Gallery's original landscaping designed by Myron Hunt. The design phase for this project is anticipated to be completed this fall and construction to begin next calendar year. Next slide. Also at the library, the Central Library Elevator Project. This involves the design and construction of a new ADA compliant elevator that will serve all floors of the Central Library. This is in plan check right now. Design is expected to be completed early this fall, and construction will be underway shortly thereafter. Next slide. The El Estero Water Resource Center electrical upgrades project will substantially overhaul the existing electrical power and distribution equipment. This has been identified as the top priority at the plant based on overall risk and consequence of failure. The proposed project will upgrade the existing electrical system throughout the Water Resource Center, including 5 electrical substations and the main electrical distribution panel feeding all of the processes in the facility. Also includes the replacement of conduit runs that connect the main panel to the substation throughout the site, and upgrades to the waste gas flare system for greater efficiency. The benefits of the completed project will be improved reliability of the facility and substantial risk minimization. Next slide. So that's the end of this presentation. This was just, again, as I said earlier, a sampling of what we have in the works in a variety of different programs. I'm available if there are any questions. This was just information only.
Thank you, Mrs. DeMore. Do any of my colleagues have any questions for staff? Ms. Harmon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Mr. DeMore. I really appreciate this. You know, so many of the projects you're describing are really just sort of a foundational responsibility of the city, and I really appreciate the opportunity for us to hear about this important work and really quite a bit of it. So my only question for you is if you could please describe for us a little bit how these projects are identified and how they're prioritized, because surely there are a long list of projects from which, you know, we would like to see all of them done. How do you decide when something is a necessary urgent priority to be done this year versus next year? Can you talk to us a little bit about that process?
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Harmon, for that question. I think it's there's not a simple answer to that because there are so many different funding sources and so many different program areas. So maybe I'll dissect it by using a specific area as an example, and then that can help to understand. But like, you know, in water resources, you've got a couple of treatment plants, you've got a distribution system for the water, and you've got a collection system for the wastewater. And how they assess things at the plant, they've got a database which includes all of the resources that are there, the age, and they can kind of keep track of things there, and working with the operators and with engineers can kind of figure out what is next in line for repair based on, you know, the amount of operational needs just begin to go up as something ages. So things typically reach sort of a tipping point where it's beyond the level of effort that's worthwhile to continue to try to maintain things. And then it'll kind of get into the engineering realm where it turns into a capital project. Funds will have to get programmed. So you're trying to pay attention to these things before it becomes an emergency, so it can be all programmed out. Similar with the work that's in the right-of-way, whether it's the streets or the utilities that are underneath. We know the age of things. We know kind of the repair history. If it's water mains, we know the main breaks. For the streets, we know how much effort's going out there to repair potholes and different things. So trying to catch things before it becomes really expensive and really inconvenient to go and fix it, because certain things get to be more expensive if you wait too long and can be more disruptive. So that's generally the approach that's taken, whichever program area it's in. And that all of that feeds into every 2 years, we do a 5-year capital improvement program. So we've got this document which has everything in it across the whole entire city. But of course, you've got individual programs and individual funding sources. So there's no overall prioritization. But that document does speak to some of the key things that would cause a project to be prioritized over another. And then that CIP work feeds into the budget process. So you start off with basically everything under the sun, and then you've got a limited budget. So you begin to hone things down based on the funding that's available. So
Thank you.
hopefully that's helpful.
Yes, very much. It's certainly sounds like a feat of long-range planning as well. So very much appreciate that. And my last question is, to the extent that community members identify capital project needs themselves, or see, let's just take something simple, a road that in their view has many potholes and needs repair, do you recommend that they reach out to your office at the city to report those? And is that sort of long-term plan available to the public so they can assess, sort of where in the timeline, the grand timeline of projects, some of these projects may fall?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Harmon. That's another really good question. I would say, I think there's a few different things I can provide in response to that. First, I would say, I would encourage people, I mean, they can contact us, email, phone, that's fine, but I would actually encourage them to, if they have access to online, we have, there's these web forms that can be filled out where you can report any number of things related to city infrastructure. And that's probably the best place to do it because it creates a paper trail. And if they want to leave contact information, we can follow up with whoever that is making the request. So that's what I would encourage. But if they would rather make a phone call or send an email, that works as well. And I encourage residents to do that, because as much as we're out there and we see things, we don't see everything. And it could be a displaced sidewalk that just wasn't on our radar, and it's important to know about what's out there, and we will get that work programmed for the streets. I know everybody wants to know, when is my street going to be repaved? And we are just as anxious to be able to answer that question as the residents are to know what the answer is to the question. Since the passage of Measure C, we've had this real great opportunity to be able to pave a tremendous number of streets. We haven't gotten yet to this steady state where we're able to look enough forward where we can begin to program that out and to be able to say, okay, 3 years from now, we're going to be on these particular streets. It's been kind of a triage. A good story though, because we've got the Measure C, and I think we're getting close to this point where we're going to be able to reach the steady state where we will have reached the targeted PCI, if people are familiar with that term. It's kind of once we reach that and things stabilize, level off, I think we'll be able to more accurately predict where we will be in future fiscal years. But right now, we aren't there yet. But by making the requests, it does put those locations, it can help elevate the priority, because like I said earlier, we don't see everything. We'd like to think that we do, but it helps.
Thank you so much, Mr. Damore. Something we can all do together. I
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Demore. Any other questions from my colleagues? Okay. Then let's open it up to public comment. Madam Clerk, are there any people willing to speak on this item?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, no persons have indicated they wish to speak.
Okay. In that case, there's no action required on our part for this, so this item just is closed. And with that being said, I'd like to now open it up for my colleagues to give their committee reports if they have any. I'd like to just say that a resident by the name of Charles Ward passed away. He was very popular around town, and I would see him at many events. So my condolences to his family and friends. He will be missed. I would also like to congratulate the Olympians from Santa Barbara who won golds. I'm currently in communication with them to see if we can honor them somehow. So I'll update you when we come back from our break. And also the Foresters, they won another world championship, and it was really fun to see their games over the summer. It's a great team, and congratulations. We'll see if we can honor them here formally sometime soon. And before we end the meeting, I'd like to close this this meeting in honor of our city administrator, Paul Casey, who is stepping down. And I'd just like to say that I greatly appreciate and respect working with you, Paul. I know that, you know, we've had our differences, but you were always professional, and you were someone that was really good to learn from. And, you know, whatever you need in the future, please don't hesitate to ask. And you will be missed. And if any of my colleagues would like to say something, you can say it now. Mr. Friedman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez. First, Paul, I just want to thank you for all your years of service to the city and the residents of Santa Barbara. And, you know, over the past 4 years when I came onto council, especially as a rookie council member, there was a lot of challenges, unprecedented at the time, and it was a lot to come at us. And when I think about when the city started breaking bad, first thing I learned to do was better call Paul. And so with that, you know, over the years, I've called you many times. We've had great discussions on items. And what I really appreciate is that when I had ideas, you helped me work through them to see if there was something that we could get through the city and if they would really have a constituency that could be served. And we really planned it out. Sometimes it would take us weeks and months to really flesh an idea out. But just as importantly were the many times that I had an idea that you talked me out of bringing it forward, helped me see the bigger picture. And I think, you know, I had some doozies over the years, and you really helped me get through those. So I really appreciate that. And I've really learned a lot from you just in public service and what it means to serve the city, and just to have a lasting impact through our involvement. And your demeanor and how you approach it was never to take credit for anything that you've done, but to be able to make change and work as a team. And when it was your part of a team project, which could include the city staff, it could include the community, and you had that critical piece, you were able to move many things forward. In particular, when we were talking, some of the things that I didn't even realize that you were instrumental in accomplishing was getting Measure C passed. We just saw the benefits of that from the last item. And also the 2011 general plan update, which is a once in a generation project that comes in, and you had such a great background and accomplished so much. So I think you've done an outstanding job, and you've really represented yourself in the city well. and will be missed. And so I'll end with this quote. So I wasn't gonna leave you without a quote. I did a slide quote to Breaking Bad, but so I wish you the best in your retirement. And the quote is, often when you are at the end of something, you are at the beginning of something else. And that's from Mr. Rogers. And you're very Mr. Rogers-esque, Paul. I found you that way. You're very, very much like Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Councilmember Friedman. Mr. Casey?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you both for those comments. You know, first thing I'll say, if council meetings are going to be this short going forward, I might reconsider stepping down. It's a nice light council meeting to end on. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to serve and work for the city of Santa Barbara for the past 24 years, and especially for the past 7 as city administrator. I want to thank this council and prior councils. Being city administrator is a privilege. It's a hard job. It's a fun job. And it's a unique job in which you're kind of the intermediary between the professional staff doing the day-to-day work of the city and trying to help implement the policy goals of elected officials, and having 7 elected officials as your boss, and trying to be professional and work with each and every one of you. So thank you. It's bittersweet that I'm leaving because I love the city of Santa Barbara and I love a lot what we do, but sometimes, you know, it's time, and for me, it's time. Really pleased that Rebecca Bjork will be the interim city administrator. The city is in good hands with her leadership and experience. And you've got a fantastic staff just across the board, up and down. You have professional men and women of the organization who are showing up every day and doing fantastic work. And so the city is in good hands with their continued work and effort on behalf of the community, on behalf of the council as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Casey, for everything, and best of luck. And we'll see you around. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Harmon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Paul, I'm sorry, I should have let you go last, but you beat me to the draw here, and I didn't want to let this moment pass without acknowledging you and truly giving you my thanks. It's been 2 years, and I have learned as Councilmember Friedman and Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez just an incredible amount from you. You are truly a wealth of knowledge about our city, a wealth of knowledge from which I have greatly benefited, from which our residents have greatly benefited. And it has been an unprecedented couple of years, and we have made it through as a city in large part thanks to your calm and steady leadership. And to me, I think with all that we have been dealing with over the last years, there's no higher praise that I can give than to say you truly have been a steady, calming presence for this community, and we thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harmon. Ms. Gutierrez?
Hello, Mr. Casey. I just want to thank you for all the work and dedication to the community, to the city, and I want to thank you for putting up with me. It's not been easy, but we, like Councilmember Pro Tem Gutierrez said, we didn't always see eye to eye, but your professionalism, you're willing to sit at the table with me and have a conversation face to face and tell us our truth, and at the same time hash it out there, and the next day I can come to you with an idea and you would guide me in who to talk to. I thank you for that, because not a lot of people can take criticism and still want to proceed and work together. And you have you had a tough position, and COVID was crazy for all of us, and you stuck through it, and with all the different personalities. So I wish you the best in your new chapter. Enjoy the free time that you're gonna have on Tuesdays. And thank you so much for all your hard work. You're definitely leaving a legacy behind. So feel proud of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez. Mr. Casey, anything else? No? All right. Well, if nobody else has anything to say, just thank you again, Mr. Casey, for everything, and good luck. And with that, I adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
you.